I stood there, a platter of perfectly roasted turkey in my hands, steam wafting up, carrying the irresistible scent of sage and thyme, only to be met by a stern, unyielding gaze from my son's new kindergarten teacher. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Henderson," she said, her voice dripping with an almost condescending pity. "But we can't have that in the classroom. This is a meat-free zone, especially today." My jaw nearly hit the floor. This was Thanksgiving, our son's first big potluck at school, and this woman, this vegan teacher, was telling me I couldn't bring turkey. Was I wrong for what I did next, for challenging her on a day that, to me, represented tradition and family, not dietary dogma? Tell me if you would have done the same thing. Let me take you back to the beginning of that school year. My son Leo was absolutely thrilled to start kindergarten. He's a bright, energetic little boy, and starting school felt like a huge milestone for our family. We live in a pretty small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone, and the school system, while not huge, has always been pretty traditional and community-focused. The teachers are usually local, often having taught generations of families. So when Leo came home buzzing about his new teacher, Ms. Meadow, I was initially delighted. He described her as super nice and always smelling like flowers, which admittedly sounded charming enough. I met her at the open house, a young woman, maybe late 20s, with bright, enthusiastic eyes and a cascade of dark, curly hair. She introduced herself as Ms. Meadow, explaining she was new to the district, having just moved from a much larger, more progressive city. She mentioned her passion for sustainability and healthy living, which I thought was great. We all want our kids to be healthy, right? The first few weeks of school were uneventful, but then the subtle changes started. Leo began talking about plant-based snacks and how animals are friends, not food. My husband, Mark, and I are pretty easygoing, but we're also firm believers in a balanced diet, which absolutely includes meat. We're not extremists, but we enjoy our steaks, our chicken, and especially our holiday roasts. We just smiled and nodded, figuring it was Ms. Meadow's personal beliefs seeping into the curriculum a little, which happens. Teachers have influence, we know that. But then the school newsletter started featuring recipes for vegan dishes, and there was an announcement about a Meatless Monday initiative in the cafeteria, which, while optional, felt a bit pushed. Again, we just shrugged. Live and let live. The real trouble began when Thanksgiving approached. The school always had a big harvest feast potluck for kindergartners. It was a beloved tradition. Parents would bring in dishes, and the kids would celebrate together, learning about gratitude and sharing. It was always a beautiful, chaotic spread of casseroles, pies, roasted vegetables, and yes, plenty of turkey. I remember my own kindergarten potlucks, the sheer joy of seeing all the different foods. I immediately planned to make my famous roasted turkey breast, a family recipe passed down from my grandmother. It's always a huge hit, moist and flavorful, and Leo absolutely loves it. I signed up for main dish on the volunteer sheet that Ms. Meadow sent home, specifically noting roasted turkey breast. I didn't think anything of it. Why would I? It's Thanksgiving. A few days later, I received an email from Ms. Meadow. It was a polite but very firm message. It read, "Dear parents, I'm so excited for our upcoming harvest feast. Just a friendly reminder that as a class, we are committed to promoting healthy, compassionate eating habits. Therefore, we kindly ask that all dishes brought in for the potluck be plant-based and meat-free. This ensures all our students can enjoy the meal without ethical concerns or dietary restrictions. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation." I read it 3 times. Plant-based? Meat-free? For Thanksgiving? My first reaction was annoyance, quickly followed by a sense of disbelief. Was this real? I called my friend Sarah, whose daughter was also in Ms. Meadow's class. "Did you see this email?" I asked, my voice tight. Sarah sighed. "Yeah, I did. I was going to bring my green bean casserole, which is usually vegetarian, but now I have to check all the ingredients to make sure there's no dairy or anything. It's a bit much, isn't it?" I decided to respond to Ms. Meadow, politely, I thought, explaining my tradition. "Dear Ms. Meadow," I wrote, "I understand the desire to promote healthy eating. However, Thanksgiving is a special holiday for many families, centered around traditional dishes like roasted turkey. My family's recipe is very important to us, and Leo was so excited for me to bring it. Would it be possible to make an exception, or perhaps have a separate table for traditional dishes? I hit send, hoping for a reasonable response. What I got back was anything but. Her reply was immediate and even firmer. Mrs. Henderson, I appreciate your enthusiasm for the holiday, but our classroom is an inclusive space for all living beings. Serving animal products, especially on a day meant for gratitude, goes against the values we are cultivating here. We must ensure that no child feels uncomfortable or that their beliefs are disrespected. There will be no exceptions. All dishes must be 100% plant-based. This is where my polite annoyance started to curdle into genuine frustration. Inclusive space for all living beings. What about the inclusion of diverse cultural and family traditions? What about the majority of families in that classroom who weren't vegan? It felt like she was imposing her personal dietary and ethical beliefs on everyone else, under the guise of inclusivity. I talked to Mark, who was equally baffled. It's kindergarten, not a vegan commune, he grumbled. She can't dictate what we eat for Thanksgiving. We knew a few other parents felt the same way, but most were either too busy or too reluctant to rock the boat. They'd just find a vegan recipe and move on. But for me, it wasn't just about the turkey anymore. It was about principle. It was about a teacher overstepping her bounds and trying to rewrite a deeply ingrained cultural holiday. I thought about Leo. He loved turkey. He was so excited to tell his friends that his mom made the best turkey. How was I supposed to explain to him that his beloved dish, a symbol of our family's celebration, was banned by his teacher? I spent the next few days stewing, debating what to do. Should I just comply? Make a vegan dish and avoid conflict? Or should I stand my ground? I polled a few more parents, gently and directly, asking their thoughts on the plant-based only rule. The consensus was mostly eye rolls and quiet exasperation. But no one seemed willing to challenge Ms. Meadow directly. They all mentioned how intense she was about her beliefs. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Here I was, a mother who just wanted to celebrate a traditional holiday with her son and his classmates, confronted by a teacher who seemed to prioritize her personal dietary philosophy over everyone else's customs. I had to decide if I was going to capitulate or push back. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have just brought the quinoa salad? Or would you have fought for the turkey? I decided to fight for the turkey. Not just for us, but for the principle of it. I felt it was important for Leo to see that sometimes, you have to stand up for what you believe in, especially when someone is trying to impose their will unfairly. The morning of the harvest feast arrived. I woke up extra early, determined. I roasted that turkey breast to perfection. It was golden brown, glistening, and smelled absolutely divine. I carved it neatly, arranging the slices artfully on a large platter, making sure it looked as appealing as possible. I also, just to be diplomatic, made a small batch of vegan roasted vegetables, thinking perhaps I could offer that as a backup. But the turkey was the star. When I arrived at the school, the kindergarten classroom was already bustling with parents and excited children. Ms. Meadow was flitting around, directing traffic, her face alight with what seemed like self-congratulatory cheer. Tables were laden with colorful, mostly vegetable-based dishes. There were lentil stews, various salads, fruit platters, and some rather sad-looking vegan cookies. Everything was labeled with little cards that proudly proclaimed 100% plant-based or cruelty-free. I walked in, holding my glorious turkey platter in one hand and the small container of roasted vegetables in the other. Immediately, Ms. Meadow spotted the turkey. Her enthusiastic smile faltered, replaced by a look of utter horror, as if I had brought a live pig to the feast. "Mrs. Henderson," she exclaimed, rushing over, her voice a hissed whisper that somehow carried across the room. "What is that?" I specifically stated that all dishes must be plant-based. I met her gaze calmly, a polite but firm smile on my face. "Ms. Meadow," I said, my voice clear and audible to the growing number of parents and children who were now looking our way. "This is roasted turkey. It's a traditional Thanksgiving dish, and it's what Leo and I chose to bring for the harvest feast." I held up the other container. "I also brought some roasted vegetables which are vegan if you prefer." Her face flushed a deep red. "You cannot be serious." I sent multiple emails. This is completely unacceptable. This goes against everything we stand for in this classroom. You're disrupting the entire spirit of the event. Children, including Leo, were now gathering around, drawn by the sudden tension. Leo looked at me with wide, confused eyes, then at the turkey, then at Ms. Meadow. Ms. Meadow, I continued, keeping my voice even. Thanksgiving is about gratitude, family, and tradition. For many, that tradition includes turkey. My son was very excited to share this with his friends. I believe it's important to respect all traditions, not just the ones that align with your personal dietary choices. By this point, several other parents had started to pay close attention. Some looked uncomfortable, some looked intrigued, and a few, I could tell, had smirks playing on their lips. Ms. Meadow, clearly flustered and losing control of the situation, tried to recover. This is not a debate, Mrs. Henderson. This is my classroom, and these are my rules. You are undermining my authority and creating an environment that is hostile to students who choose a compassionate lifestyle. She gestured wildly at the turkey. That is an animal product. It has no place here. And this, I responded, gesturing around the room at the various other parents, is a community potluck for families to share their traditions. My son is not vegan, nor are most of the children in this class. Are their traditions less valid because they involve meat? Are you creating an environment that is hostile to them? Before she could respond, another parent, Mrs. Rodriguez, a quiet woman I knew from school pickups, stepped forward. Excuse me, Ms. Meadow, she said softly but firmly. I actually agree with Mrs. Henderson. My family always brings a traditional tamale casserole to the Christmas potluck, and it has meat. If this rule applies to Thanksgiving, does it apply to all holidays? Are we to erase all our cultural food traditions because of one person's diet? Suddenly, another parent, Mr. Chun, spoke up. Yeah, I was going to bring a sweet and sour pork dish for the International Day next month. Is that banned too? The tide was turning. Ms. Meadow, who clearly expected everyone to quietly conform, was now facing a small but growing rebellion. She looked cornered, her face a mask of indignation mixed with panic. She stammered. This is different. This is Thanksgiving. It's about kindness to all creatures. And it's also about giving thanks for our harvest, which historically included hunting and farming. I countered, perhaps a little too sharply. It's about sharing. And my turkey is here to be shared. Just then, the principal, Mr. Davies, walked into the classroom, probably drawn by the raised voices and the unusual silence from the usually boisterous children. He took in the scene, me holding the turkey, Ms. Meadow looking furious, and a cluster of parents looking either amused or annoyed. Is everything all right here? He asked, his brow furrowed. Ms. Meadow immediately launched into a frantic explanation, pointing at my turkey as if it were a weapon. Mr. Davies, Mrs. Henderson has brought an animal carcass into the classroom. After I explicitly stated the event was plant-based. She is being completely disrespectful of our values. I calmly stepped forward. Mr. Davies, with all due respect, Ms. Meadow sent an email banning all meat from the Thanksgiving potluck. I believe this is an overreach of her authority and disregards the traditional customs of many families here. Thanksgiving is a diverse holiday, and frankly, singling out meat as disrespectful is disrespectful to those of us who celebrate with it. Mr. Davies, a man who had navigated many a parent-teacher dispute in his career, listened intently. He looked from Ms. Meadow's flushed face to my resolute one, then at the turkey, which by now seemed to be emanating a beacon of delicious defiance. He then looked at the other parents, noting their expressions. Ms. Meadow, he said, his voice calm but firm, while I appreciate your dedication to healthy eating and promoting compassion, the school does not have a blanket policy against meat at parent-organized potlucks. Our role is to facilitate, not to dictate personal dietary choices for holiday celebrations. Parents are free to bring dishes that reflect their family's traditions, provided they are prepared safely. Ms. Meadow looked utterly stunned, as if her entire world had just been shattered. But the values, the ethics, she spluttered. Mr. Davies raised a hand. Your values are important, Ms. Meadow, and you can certainly encourage plant-based options in your own lessons. But a school-wide potluck, especially for a holiday like Thanksgiving, needs to be inclusive of all families and their diverse traditions. Mrs. Henderson is well within her rights to bring her turkey. He then turned to me, a small, knowing smile. Mrs. Henderson, please feel free to set your turkey on the main table. And those look like delicious roasted vegetables as well. A ripple of relief, and some quiet chuckles, went through the parent group. Ms. Meadow, defeated, just stood there speechless. I walked over and proudly placed my turkey platter right in the center of the main food table, next to a rather sad-looking bowl of quinoa salad. Leo, seeing the turkey, let out a joyful cheer and ran to hug my leg. "Mommy, you brought the turkey," he exclaimed, beaming. The rest of the potluck was, thankfully, much more pleasant. Many parents, seeing the turkey, flocked to it. It was the first dish to be completely devoured. Ms. Meadow, to her credit, stayed professional, albeit a bit subdued, for the rest of the event. She didn't look at me directly much, but she didn't make any more scenes. The aftermath was interesting. I heard through the grapevine that Mr. Davies had a long chat with Ms. Meadow about parent relations and respecting diversity. There were no more meat-free mandates for school events. Ms. Meadow continued to teach, and Leo still enjoyed her class, though he did, on occasion, come home with new facts about the benefits of kale, which we just took with a grain of salt. I never regretted bringing that turkey. It wasn't about disrespecting Ms. Meadow's choices, but about standing up for my own family's traditions and ensuring that our son's first experience of a school Thanksgiving wasn't overshadowed by an adult's overly zealous dietary rules. Sometimes, you just have to bring the turkey. So that's my story. It was a Thanksgiving potluck I'll never forget. It taught me a lot about standing your ground, and about the importance of tradition, even in the face of what some might call progress. Like this video if you were on my side and think traditions should be respected. Subscribe for more stories like this, where everyday situations turn into unexpected battles of wills. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. What would you have done? And what's your favorite Thanksgiving dish, meat or no meat? I'll see you all in the next story.